remember when the war broke out. I was 7 to 8 years old, as far as I can recall. I come from a middle-class family. My father and mother probably were pretty well assimilated, thought of themselves more as Poles, perhaps, than Jews. Most of the Jews spoke Yiddish in Poland, but in our home, Yiddish was not spoken. It was Polish. I would say my knowledge of what happened in the 30s was about nil. 1939 found me vacationing with my grandparents in unpronounceable, but I can pronounce it, little town called Szczeciec near Lublin. I think that would be Ukraine now, by the way. Sure. And I still remember planes flew over and started dropping bombs, and kind of at first we thought it was all children, that is. Thought it was all kind of a game, and it was not a game, that was the beginning of the war. We were briefly occupied by the Germans, perhaps a week or two after the war broke out. Being Eastern Poland, that was ceded to the Soviet Union, so the Germans were replaced by the Russians. At that time, I'm not sure which was really better. Well, probably the Russians were better because they persecuted people not because of their religious or ethnic origin, but because of what they stood for. If you were Zionist, it was bad. If you were socialist, it was bad. If you were capitalist, it was bad. If you were a farmer, it was bad. Just about there was nothing that was good. Even if you were a communist, it was bad. I think the Germans turned on the Russians, I believe, in 1941. At that time, we were back, my father and I, in Vilnius. My mother, by a stroke of luck, was in France when the war broke out, so she never came back to Poland and spent the war years, in fact, in Canada. And I remember the police used to come every now and then and pick up people, deport them. That was the Russian police, by the way, or Lithuanian police, I suppose. Once friends were disappearing, there was no normal school. At that time, I think children grew up quickly, and it was probably 8 or 9 going on 20 by that time. In 41, Germans came, and very shortly, and I don't remember exactly how many months it took them, but it wasn't long before they established a ghetto in Vilna. Remember, by the time Vilna fell to the Germans, it was already 2 years after World War II broke out, so they already had their experience in mistreating Jews by that time.
What do you remember about the ghetto?
Horrendous overcrowding. In one room there might have been, I don't know, 4 or 5 families. Floor space for sleeping is all you had. And lack of food. My father decided in his wisdom, thank God, that the ghetto wasn't for us, and we made our escape. The Germans, with little money, could do a lot of things. And we got onto a truck that went from Vilna to Warsaw, and that's all I remember. We ended up in Warsaw. Reason for going to Warsaw, my father was a very prominent citizen. There was no way for him to hide in Vilna and not be recognized. In Warsaw, we now changed our identity. We all became very Polish, or as best as we could, got new documents, new names. After a while, my dad, I think, money was running out, or whatever assets he had. So he took us back now to the Warsaw Ghetto, not the Vilna Ghetto, the Warsaw Ghetto. Warsaw Ghetto was like one big city, really, and many good things going on. There were restaurants, libraries, theater, concerts. I still remember that there was a pretty thriving cultural life, side by side with terrible poverty and terrible hunger. A few months, or maybe less than a few months, the Germans started liquidating the ghetto. And we had to escape from the ghetto. My father escaped because he worked on a road gang, and he just was able to detach himself from the gang and make his way to the lodging that we had But the rest of the group that escaped with us from Vilna was still there, so he just went there. I did it something much simpler. I just walked out of the ghetto. And again, it was one of those lucky things that there was a van came and the Germans were checking out the van and they waved the Poles who were returning from working in the ghetto. There was, traffic both ways. Waved them on, and I was one of them, and I was gone. So we pretty much returned back to what we had, the way we had lived before. But now our Jewish identity became somehow known, and we were blackmailed by Polish policemen, and then life was getting more and more precarious. One Sunday morning, I still remember it, I was sent out to do some shopping, food shopping. And as I was coming back, I saw my father and the rest of the group led out to a van by, I think was mixture Polish and German police. If I had been there 5 minutes earlier, 5 minutes later, I wouldn't be here today. I was on my own. I had shelter. I had no money. I remember names of a couple of Polish friends of my father in Warsaw. So they gave me a little money, and I went to business. I used to go to the market, buy fruit and vegetables, bring it back to our neighborhood and sell door to door. One of my clients was a lady, and she asked me if I wanted, she knew I was on my own. She lived right pretty much across from where I was, and she asked me if I would like to stay with her. It was like heaven. It was 6 months or so after I moved in with her, my father reappeared, and he, in a group of 10, made an escape from prison in Warsaw. My father's freedom was short-lived. He was caught again and shot while he was trying to escape. One of my uncles came to Sweden and made arrangements for me to leave Poland and go to Sweden. There, while I was in Sweden, my mother came. For my mother, it was very emotional. For me, it wasn't that emotional. I think one thing you lose living the way I did, I think the emotions, you lose the ability to be too emotional. And to this day, by the way. I think if you are too sensitive, which I suppose being emotional is, you couldn't live with yourself through the horrible experiences of the war. I think all of us have a will to survive. If you were in my position at my age, you would have probably done the same. For a long time, I was sort of in denial. I tried not to think about it, not to act on it, and not to talk to my family about it. Today, my view is totally different. I think those of us who were lucky to survive, I think survived for a reason, and the reason is that we need to tell others what happened.